Very, very concerning state of affairs. The biggest story on the African continent. For decades now, South Africa has been seen as a land of opportunity for many Africans seeking work, seeking education, and a better future. But recent anti-legal immigration protests and attacks on foreign nationals have once again put the country's relationship with the rest of the continent under the spotlight. Uganda has now joined several African countries in launching a voluntary repatriation program for its citizens who no longer feel safe in South Africa. The Ugandan government says more than 1,200 Ugandans have registered for assistance to return home, a number that has grown rapidly in recent days as concerns over safety have intensified. But beyond the evacuation itself lies, I think, a much bigger question. How is the rest of Africa viewing what is happening in South Africa? How are they interpreting it? And joining us now from Kampala in Uganda is a very, very good friend of the show, Musinguzi Goodluck. He's a journalist and editor at Kigezi News, and we'll be getting a perspective from Africa, from Uganda, about South Africa and how our country has positioned itself in the last couple of months when it comes to our interactions with the rest of the continent. Brother Goodluck, good morning. Thank you so much for joining us. Always a pleasure.
Good morning from Kampala. Indeed, we are watching what's happening. I saw you on the streets interviewing somebody, and especially when you asked about the question, what Africa did for South Africa, and he said if it was only Zambia and Tanzania. So I was like, okay, but that's, how we wake up as Africa.
No, most definitely. I think, there's always a moment to learn it. There's always a moment to almost suss out what the people on the ground are feeling and are seeing. And I can tell you, I definitely got a whole lot of different opinions on June 30th on the ground. But then, Goodluck, from where you're sitting in Uganda, how closely have been people following the events unfolding in South Africa over the past few weeks, and how are Ugandans interpreting it, and also from just generally the African perspective? I know you can't speak for the whole of the African continent, but it's interesting to hear and listen to the opinions from outside of South Africa as a South African on how this issue is being interpreted and understood by fellow Africans.
Thank you very much. I think start with the World Cup. When the World Cup started, and we knew that South Africa was among the African countries, participating, and there was that debate. You could see on social media some people saying, "Oh, we won't support South Africa," but I supported South Africa all the way. And so, apart from the World Cup, and of course with the interconnection of South Africa, the next biggest item as an issue what people are talking about is the immigration issues. And most especially, when you look across the board, everybody is like saying, bye-bye Africa. We will never be the same again because, it is... When attacks are from outside, then there is that element of saying, let's come together and fight together, maybe as Africa. But for the first time now, Africa is, for some reasons that are really beyond my opinions, that we find ourselves in such a situation. It is very sad. You can imagine us following the presidential addresses from South Africa. We saw the cabinet reshuffle yesterday. We are following as at each point. And the other thing I was watching a show you hosted, the CEO of businesses. And true that even now I'm talking to you via an MTN line. That's a South African company. South Africa influences us so much. When I'm buying anything and I find something from South Africa, it's as if it's ours. How do we wake up after 30th? That Africa will go on in terms of supporting businesses. You have heard that the biggest business for South Africa is from the hinterland of Africa. So what will happen eventually after that? So as Africa, we wake up thinking that things could have been the other way around. But I also, recently I was in China. I saw Nigerians at the airport and in Guangzhou, but I also met a couple, a South African couple, which actually invited me to South Africa in December. We met in Shenzhen City, and we sat, ate, and had a train ride together back to Guangzhou, stayed in the same hotel. Let me tell you what, I also believe that the South African people are not speaking out of the blue. Sometimes, even us here, even here in Uganda, the comments we hear about other people, especially foreigners, sometimes when you listen to the local languages as to how people demean each other, sometimes it is something that is food for thought. And as us as Africans, we have a tendency when we go to European, Asia, or America, we want to behave very well. But sometimes when you hear our comments about our fellow Africans, sometimes it's not good. And therefore, I don't want to be one-sided, that we blame South Africans all together. I mean, if you go to Bayun Airport in China, you find Nigerians almost have taken it over for reasons you can't tell. They want to help you, but then ask for money here and there, and yet they are not allowed. So some of these things, when South Africans raise these issues, it's good for all of us to think about why after all this time. I really wanted also to add that when Nelson Mandela came to Uganda, I think apart from the Pope, we will never see that. We will never see the whole country coming to a standstill. I was not in Kampala. I was 600 miles away. I was a young child, but I was I think in primary school, but it was almost like a national holiday. And therefore, why is it that South Africans are waking up now saying, no, there is a problem? So I think we need to listen to them. But also, as they talk of issues like coffins, routing, and I saw, beating sometimes even fellow South Africans because of issues of failing to identify each other, is that all of us should really know that if Africa ever gets an enemy, and even yesterday, actually, I listened to the president when he was addressing the Google Cloud something summit. He said that Africa is playing catch up on digital services. How about the day when one of us is attacked by, you see what's happening in Iran, you see what is happening in Gaza? When shall we? So for me, I think Africa, for many reasons, we are going to remain consumers. We have failed to preserve our culture. We have failed to preserve our unity. And so even I don't want to blame anybody, but I just want to say that yes, some of us who saw apartheid, who studied with South Africans, I studied with them at a school called Kako in central Uganda. They were good soccer players. We supported them. The day, Nelson Mandela was released, again, it was another day that Africa maybe will never see in the recent times. So to those South Africans, also when you are who could be listening, is that yes, at one point you might also want to go to other countries. You have embassies, you have businesses, and therefore, as we are reading, for the first time I'm reading internal things of South Africa, which maybe shouldn't have been a big concern to me. If unemployment is at 45%, you need to sit down as a country. You need to see how do you skill your people. I visited Johannesburg, I visited Soweto, I have been to that country. There is no country that is better than South Africa on this continent. And therefore, so for me, who has an invitation to come in December?
Brother Goodluck, I'm really pressed for time. I want us to take a quick break, but when we come back, I want you to continue with your point, and I want us to come back and just focus on Uganda and the government there launching those voluntary repatriations and how the situation in South Africa is being viewed from Uganda's government's point of view. But we'll do all of that after the short ad break.
Shimmer, sparkle, captivate. Nothing less than a masterpiece. Droplets of gold inspires precious design. Platinum bursts with intricate freshness. And every pure diamond becomes more than just a girl's best friend. Voda Gold Gem Jewelers, where timeless dreams become a reality. Come to us. We tailor-make designer gold, platinum, and diamond jewelry. Trade in or remodel your old gold. Clad yourself with classy name-branded watches. We offer insurance valuation and freezer card calculation. Visit us at 534 Ridge Road, Overport, or call 031 208 9142. Voda Gold Gem Jewelers, manufacturers of fine gold and diamond jewelry.
Discover the Africa of your dreams and surround yourself with her spectacular beauty. Relax beneath her serene sunsets and explore wildlife at its natural best. It's where the pride of Africa comes together. The Kwantu Private Game Reserve. Get to know the Big Five or cruise on an elephant safari game drive. Interact with lion and tiger cubs and enjoy world-class halal cuisine while we pamper you during your 5-star stay. Indulge in the true African experience. For reservations, call now on 042-203-1400 or visit kwantu.co.za. The Kwantu Private Game Reserve, the place of gathering.
When the perfect blend of stylish decor, exquisite halal cuisine, and warm hospitality come together, it could only mean Albeit Lodge, your true home away from home. Albeit is the ideal heaven for families, business people, and tourists with its 4-star family rooms and other luxurious facilities. Conveniently situated close to Port Elizabeth Airport, the beach, and other amenities, your stay will be truly unforgettable, as you'll be taking home lasting memories of the warm hospitality, the serenity and tranquility that Albeit has to offer. For reservations, call 041 583 6415 or visit www.albeitlodge.co.za.
Africa. Give the gift of clean water with Africa Muslims Agency. With every water well or borehole you donate, your drop becomes a river, reconnecting communities to nourishment, education, dignity and empowerment. Sponsor a water well for 17,000 Rand in Africa or a borehole for 65,000 Rand in Afghanistan or Africa. Quench the thirst. Reconnect the soul with Africa Muslims Agency.
At Dynasty Islamic, we believe your financial future should grow with purpose and in line with your values. We specialize in Sharia-compliant financial solutions designed to protect, grow, and preserve your wealth. Whether it's investment planning, risk cover, or structuring your legacy, our approach is rooted in transparency, integrity, and ethical principles. Too often, people invest without knowing if their money aligns with their beliefs. At Dynasty Islamic, we change that, offering you clarity, confidence, and peace of mind. Let us help you build a future that's not only financially secure, but spiritually aligned. Dynasty Islamic, where your wealth meets your values. Get in touch with us at info@dynastyislamicfas.co.za, visit www.dynastyislamic.com or find us on Facebook and Instagram.
Rejuvenating media day by day. This is Salam Media.
Welcome back. Still tuned in to News and Views. Myself, Salaila Makwidire, and I'm still in conversation with Brother Goodluck Musinguzi, coming to us live from Kampala. And we're having a conversation. At least for me, it feels like an out of body conversation where you have fellow African giving his perspective on what their country thinks and feels about the latest developments in South Africa, the anti-illegal migrant protests that we've been seeing that have rocked the country, and also just generally as an African, their perspective on how we as South Africans have gone about things. Brother Goodluck, thank you so much for staying with us. I wanted to just move on just for the sake of time and look at Uganda and how the government of Uganda has been viewing what's been happening in South Africa. There's a sizable Ugandan migrant population in South Africa, and South Africa and Uganda have enjoyed really good bilateral relations for some time now. I mean, your national stadium is named after our late statesman Nelson Mandela. It is a country that assisted South Africa in a lot of ways during the dark days of apartheid. And Uganda has now launched a voluntary repatriation program for its citizens who are here in South Africa that don't feel safe. Give us insight on that. How are government officials in Uganda understanding, viewing, and reading this current state of affairs regarding South Africa?
I think in the next 24 hours from now or more, we are going to have a presidential address on that. But as to how Uganda is preparing, in the coming 8 hours from now, the first batch of Ugandans will be landing at Entebbe Airport. There are 5 centers or more which have been put in South Africa. We have Durban, we have Pretoria, we have I think Johannesburg and other Cape Town and other places. And the Ugandan military also sent in some military officials to map out routes that will be used by people who want to voluntarily, leave South Africa, because it's really about safety of people. There are those who had left voluntarily, but then there are those who were unable. They reached out to the embassy, and there has been a lot of coordination. The presidency, the prime ministership, and the military, and also the Ugandan carrier, Uganda Airlines, which at some point, to those who were opposing it, maybe saying it's not profitable. It's such a days that you wake up and you know that sovereignty sometimes is good, because we could have cut out most of the routes. There are as many planes as we can mobilize. They are chartered planes. They are already in South Africa and ready to pick up the first batch of people who are expected at 6:30. That's almost 13 hours, almost 8 hours from now. Ugandans will be returning home.
Here in South Africa, there's been concerted efforts by the people of the country to make a distinction between illegal immigration and the hard stance against it, and xenophobia. From Uganda's perspective, is that distinction understood, or is this being seen simply as hostility towards fellow Africans?
No, I think for me, from my side, I understand it is because that we also have Ugandans who live here, and we have had stories maybe which have not been written, where people engage in activities that are not right, especially which include witchcraft and lying that they can heal, they can do some of those things, and therefore that's a known story that some people here do it. They live here either by bus or by plane. They find themselves in South Africa, and then they practice, is it voodoo or something, black witch magic or something, and where they start picking money from people. And so it's true that even us here in Uganda, we know that there are people who are illegal in South Africa, but who are trying to make ends meet. And I have a belief that the question is how you handle people. For example, we have already lost a Ugandan who was killed, out of this. And but generally, even when we talk of xenophobia and blame South Africans, that inside us, when we start talking to ourselves, we know that yes, there are people who have left these countries and have gone there and they are there illegally. And if they are not adding productively to the economy of South Africa or to the well-being of South Africans, maybe it's true people, it's right people to wake up and say, you know what, we want these types of people. As here we have an open policy where we allow, immigrants, where we allow refugees and they can be able to work. And for example, our president, and lastly on this point, he has said, who is your customer? What are you selling? If you are from a community that are farmers and everybody is a farmer, they will not buy your products. You will want another community to buy for you. And therefore, he says, look at people as your potential customers.
No, that's very, very true. Brother Goodluck, I want to focus on, what I feel should be a moment of reckoning for the entire continent. Because as much as a lot of the actions that have been happening in South Africa, at least for me and a lot of South Africans, I can assure you, have been quite embarrassing. Because for the longest of time, South Africa has been lauded on the African continent as the leaders when it comes to freedom, when it comes to accepting fellow Africans from, all across the continent and living in peace and harmony. And we set the bar and standard very high when it comes to unity in diversity. That's the slogan of, South Africa. There's unity in our diversity. But should this moment also be viewed as a moment of reckoning for the entire continent, the people, the leaders of the continent, that we need to wake up as a continent, we need to better ourselves. There can't be one quote unquote functioning country and then we all flock to it, unfortunately, because of the circumstances. And there needs to be a bit more accountability from the leaders of other fellow African countries to do a bit better by their citizens. You can't outsource your citizens to other countries. It's unfair, it's unsustainable, and we're seeing it in South Africa, where it was all good and well when the economy of South Africa was functioning, when South Africans didn't feel like they had to compete for certain jobs with fellow Africans, when South Africans didn't feel like service delivery was dilapidating and we have to compete for clinics and hospital beds and medicines with Africans that are coming in. It was fine. But we're coming to a place where our very own government has failed South Africans exceptionally, to a point where how you viewed a migrant 20 years ago and how you view a migrant now, it's different. 20 years ago, you had a Ugandan friend and it was okay because there was no competition. They were working, you were working. Fast forward 2026, that migrant friend is competition for a bed in a hospital, for a job, for a placement at a university or a high school. So my question is, should there be a moment of reckoning for the entire continent, an Arab Spring like change of mind shift on how we hold our leaders accountable?
I totally agree with you that there is no way you can say another country or one or two out of 54 will shield the problems of other African countries. And for me, now it goes back to these African countries. For example, the world is on the AI race. Where are we in terms of, imagine what we are talking about. The others are going to space. The others are becoming very rich. We are also again going to be consumers. So for me, I believe that internally, even as here we have that discussion, and even the altercations you are hearing in our country. For example, here they have put a slogan that we must grow tenfold. we are an economy which is around 60 billion US dollars. Our country is targeting to reach $500 billion. And they have put a roadmap how we are going to reach there. But I must also tell Africa that our European and American friends are also not going to allow you. And you have seen videos where they say Africa, you see, from disease, from economic policies, from aid, from, policies that, steep for Africa. So it's like Africa is fighting a double-edged problem. Internally, you have issues, but also externally as a continent. You are fighting these continents which look at you as a source of minerals, a source of market. So with this, what happened in South Africa, it's good that let all of us sit back and ask, why is it that 10,000 Ugandans must leave to go to South Africa? What can we do? Can our economy encompass them? What are the programs that have been put around? So, for example, as when COVID ended, all of us had really been shuttered down. So the government has put, for example, in each family per year, or sometimes even, so the lowest form of a nation, after a family, you have a village and a parish. There they have putting almost between $400, $500 that can be applied by people so that they are able to uplift themselves. And we have seen this work. And therefore, depending on other categories, they have put so much money that you can go to banks, pick it, and do some business. But when we see what is happening in Zimbabwe, in Malawi, especially countries also around South Africa, with the issues of governance and even Central Africa, East Africa, and maybe North Africa, we must start thinking that our leaders must start knowing that, as you have rightly said, if I was your friend 20 years ago and we were not competing, today we are competing. Africa is expected to have more than 2 billion people. What's going to happen? The pressure on the resources we have is going to be so much. So therefore, instead of blaming South Africa or South Africans, let's also come back home. And rightly, for us, even here, our president said it one time. He asked people, why are you leaving? Because he said, this is a country that has, 2 planting seasons. I mean, a while ago, I was eating fish, which I went to Lake Victoria yesterday, bought a fresh fish, and this morning I was eating it, and it's not that costly. And so he was asking those fundamentals. So as a country, I think once the presidential address is given in the next 24 hours or 30, we are going to have a bigger discussion. In this coming 5 years, we must see we must see programs that will make us love to be here. So that at least I go to South Africa as a tourist this coming December, not as somebody who's coming to put pressure on the economic resources of South Africa.
And we all long to see that day when that is a reality across the continent. Last question before I let you go, Brother Goodluck, and you can answer it as quickly as possible. Does the rest of the continent now hate South Africa?
To those who don't understand, we'll hate. I saw it with the World Cup results. There are those who were celebrating, and for me, I'm a person who reads a lot. I've moved to South Africa. There are no South Africans are good people. I can assure you on that. But we also understand that the economic pressures, that when you are put to a war, how do you react? That when you are facing poverty and death, when you can't find a bed in hospital, and maybe there is a foreigner. So it is, again, those who are hating, they have failed to understand. But that will also come to them if
Mm.
they don't handle those issues internally. So for me, I have no issue with South Africa.
We know that you love us. Thank you so much, Musinguzi Goodluck. And I hope when you come down to South Africa in December, you and I can sit down and have a cup of coffee. Really appreciate you giving us your time, always.
Thank you.
There we go. Yeah, I think very, very hard discussions that the rest of the continent, not just South Africa, needs to start grappling with. And I'm going to reiterate this. What we are seeing now is fundamental, exceptional failures, not just of the South African government, but the governments across the continent. You simply can't outsource your residents and their needs to another country. But with that in mind, South Africa is in Africa. That's one thing we forget sometimes as South Africans, largely because of apartheid and how we were so closed off and cordoned off from the rest of the continent. There's a feeling that we're not part and parcel of this continent. And being part and parcel of this continent means you will have people from other African countries coming to South Africa. But that doesn't mean we have to excuse illegality. That doesn't mean we have to excuse crime, and coming into a country illegally is a crime. So for me, this moment, I think an outcome, rather than Africans bashing each other and name calling and doing all sorts of unsavory things towards each other, I think what would be a positive that would come out of this would be Africans from Cape to Cairo asking difficult questions to their leaders. You need to do better so that Africans don't flock to South Africa, so that Africans don't endanger their lives in the Mediterranean Sea trying to cross to Europe. Africans should hold their leaders accountable, and African leaders should be embarrassed. They should hang their heads in shame that their people, their constituencies, people that voted them in power, find it so unbearable to stay in their countries that they would risk it all. That should be the conversation that we're having from now onwards. Because the idea of Pan-Africanism and let's all hug each other and have no borders, and that's good and well when you read about it in books and you quote old African leaders, but the reality on the ground is different. Africa is not functioning. And we're not talking enough about that. Goodluck is mentioned that countries are talking about going to space and 4IR, and we're still discussing tuck shops and who needs to keep them. Because a person doesn't mind coming all the way from Nigeria, Somalia, right in the Horn of Africa, all the way down to South Africa to open a tuck shop. Those are the conversations we need to be having. Otherwise, we've come to the end of today's edition of News and Views. Thank you so much for staying with us. I'll be back with you again next week, Tuesday night. Wadi will be with you tomorrow for the Friday edition of the show. Otherwise, bye-bye. Shap, shap.